Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to Visordown, welcome to Wales, and welcome to our review of the new KTM 790 Duke. As you can see, I'm sat in a hot tub. We are here really because the actual launch of the 790 Duke, it kind of slipped under the radar a little bit. There was a press release went out and there was a bit of news about it, but there was no press ride-in launch, and the bike got lost a little bit. Obviously the 890 Duke R is still very much a thing, and this is kind of a lower level of the middleweight Duke family. So what exactly is it? Well, it's £7,995. We've got 95 bhp, which is 10 less than the 890R, and we've got around about 87 newton meters of torque. So the 799cc engine is denoted, it's called the LC8L, I think, which the L denotes low, which is low output, low power output effectively. And what that means for this model that you can't do on the 890 Duke R is that you can convert this so that it's A2 compatible. So it's opening up a whole new range of riders for people who want to own a KTM Duke effectively. Really, it differentiates itself from the 890R in two ways really. The first is the engine, so it's got that slightly lower capacity, which means it can be A2 compliant. And the other is in the suspension. So this doesn't have any fully adjustable suspension at the front. It's just got standard 42mm forks with no adjustability whatsoever. You've got a WP rear shock, which has got 5-stage manual preload adjustability on there on the spring. But other than that, the two bikes are the same. And yes, the big talking point about these bikes is that they are made in China. So this is part of the collaboration that KTM have got going with CF Moto. I'm going to talk a bit more about what is going on behind the scenes in that collaboration in a little bit, but first and foremost I just want to tell you what we've done today and how I found the little 790 Duke. So first things first, don't really think of this as a poor person's Duke. It's not. You've still got all the trick riding modes that you get on the 890 Duke R, if you want them of course, because they are already in there. You just have to get them unlocked by your KTM dealer. So you've got the motor slip control, you've got the traction control, you've got the cornering ABS, you've even got launch control, you've got wheelie control. It's all in there, and you've even got the riding modes that go all the way up to track mode if you want to. You've got the quick shifter, which has got the up shifts and the down shifts with a blipper, so you can change gear without using your clutch. It's all there, and you've got the lovely TFT, you've got the same ergonomics, you've got the same handling dynamics, really, up to a point. You've got very much the same handling dynamics, and you've got that same punchy parallel twin cross-plane engine that just is an absolute joy to use on the road. There's a couple of things that I've noticed about the bike. The main one that I'm going to take away from it is there's some little bits of the electronics that KTM have just improved since the 790 Duke first appeared. I rode that bike when it first came out, the very first edition of the 790 Duke, and there were some things about it that were a little bit glitchy. The things that stood out for me was the electronics weren't very refined. The quick shifter and the gearbox didn't seem to like working together very well, and the throttle connection was very snatchy and very jerky. Now, whether or not this is specific for the 790 Duke, or if this bike has benefited from some of the learnings that have gone on over the years since they've been building this middleweight naked family, those are all ironed out. So the gearbox is much more accurate, much more direct. You don't get all those false neutrals that you used to get when it was hanging around in between gears. And the quick shifter actually is very, very good. It used to be really abrupt, and sometimes it'd shift and sometimes it wouldn't, and you'd have to be really belligerent with the lever. They've ironed all of that out, so that's improved it massively. Another nice touch with the quick shifter is that you can use it around town, and it seems to be able to shift on a trailing throttle as well, so you can downshift when you're just trailing the throttle and it doesn't thump into the next gear and hammer you in the back, which is quite a nice touch. The other one is the throttle connection, and that was the biggest one for me, because if you're making a bike that is a middleweight naked bike, it's a bike to go out and have fun on. It doesn't need to be a serious track day weapon, it doesn't need to do big distances, it doesn't need any of that stuff. What it needs to do is be fun, and that's what the rest of the category does. When the throttle connection on the old bike was so snatchy and so jerky, it kind of almost took all the fun out of it, and it kind of diluted that fun factor because you never quite knew what you were going to get when you opened the throttle. That's all changed, and this is much, much better. Even in the most extreme track mode, which turns off the ABS to the rear wheel and turns the traction control right down and turns the wheelie control right down, with the most direct throttle on the road, it was still an absolute pleasure to use. And normally when you go into those extreme track riding modes, that's when bikes on the road become They become a bit too much, and it can be a bit too frantic and a bit too frenetic. But that is one thing I didn't notice with this bike. One thing I did notice on this bike, while I'm on the subject, is the fuel economy. We were riding quite excitedly earlier on today. We've been in the Welsh countryside. We've really only stuck to A roads and B roads, and we've just been having an absolute hoot on them. One thing I will say, we did get down to the point where I think I'd used just over half a tank, and we'd done about 75 or 80 miles, so there isn't massive amounts of range in this. It is very comfy, so you could go long distances on it if you wanted to, but in terms of actual tank range to empty, it doesn't seem to be that great. That said, these bikes are quite new, so as they get more bedded in and a little bit more used, that may improve. The only other real thing that I want to say about these bikes, and this is a kind of a conversation that started on social media when they announced they were going to be making the 790 Duke and it was going to be built in China, was people bemoaning what the quality of the bike would be, what the build quality of the bike would be, and that it's not a KTM, it's just a CF Moto. Having ridden it today, I can tell you there is no difference in the fit, the finish, or the detailing on this machine than you would get on any of the KTMs that are built in Austria. And I'm not just saying that, you can't physically tell. There is nothing about this bike, unless you took down the frame number and ran it through the KTM system to find out where it was made, you wouldn't actually know. It is just as good. And that comes down mainly to the fact that it isn't just being built by CF Moto, it's built on a separate KTM line in a factory in China, which is shared with CF Moto, which is run by, managed by and inspected by KTM staff from Austria. So it is an in-house operation in pretty much everything but the geography of where it is. A lot of the parts of the KTMs previously were manufactured in different countries, so that hasn't really changed. It's literally just where all the nuts, the bolts and the guts of the bike get thrown together in that factory. So there is no difference. If anything, for me, this has just made a great little bike quite a bit more affordable than it used to be. Anyway, it's a lovely evening over here in Wales. I've waffled on far too long, and if you've liked that video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of Visordown's latest videos. And for all the latest news, reviews and motorcycle features, get yourself over to Visordown.com. Cheers folks.